Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. And since we just heard the bells of the United Bank, we're ready to go. So the regular meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority is now in session at 9 o'clock on April 12th, 2017. Mr. Taz, any public comment?
No, ma'am. None received.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3, adoption of minutes for the RMA board meeting March 8th, 2017. Everybody had a chance to review them?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 3 is approved. Item number 4, update on the RMA's issuance of subordinate lien vehicle registration fee revenue bonds, Series 2017 for the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan. Raymond.
Yes, ma'am. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. As you know, we've been working with the County of El Paso on a second vehicle registration fee bond issuance, and we are nearing closing on that particular deal. So today we have with us Wayne Placide, who is part of our financial advisor team, and he's going to come up and share a presentation with you to brief you on how the deal has gone to date. So, Mr. Placide.
Thank you, Raymond. Madam Chairperson, members of the board, my name is Wayne Placide. I'm with First Southwest Company. That's a division of Hilltop Securities. I'd like to just give you a brief summary over the financing that we did on the 22nd. Just in sort of some background in terms of where we were, tone of the market at the time we did the financing. The week prior to doing our financing, the Feds had increased interest rates by 25 basis. And the other thing that happened that somewhat impacted us was that the volume for that week was slightly up from the previous week. But notwithstanding that, we were still very successful in getting a very attractive pricing. And we were lucky in the sense that we had sort of a unique credit and unique financing, and the market was very receptive to it. We went out fairly aggressive. Citigroup, who's the lead manager, worked very closely with us in helping it achieve a very aggressive pricing. And what happened is that we were, as a result of that, we were oversubscribed. Like in 8 maturities. And what basically happened when you oversubscribe, you have more buyers than you have bonds. So that means that what you could do, you go back and you reduce the interest rates, making sure you still cover the maturity, but you're able to reduce the interest rates, which helped in terms of creating more proceeds from the financing. Just on the next slide is just a summary of the assumptions with the financing. The bonds were insured by Assured Guarantee, so they had a AA- rating. The underlying rating for the bonds was a A-, and that's because the bonds were issued on a subordinate basis. The bonds that we issued in 2014 was done on a senior basis, and those bonds were rated AA. The net proceeds for the project was like $35.4 million. As a precaution and as a safeguard for the RMA, we funded 2 debt service reserve funds, one from excess surplus funds. The second one, we bought a surety from Assured Guarantee for the second one. So essentially, you have 2 years' worth of debt service on hand. If anything goes wrong, that drops in their revenues, whatever, you have 2 years' worth of debt service that you can use to pay before you have a problem. So we thought that was pretty important because we did reduce the coverage to 110 from 120. The first interest payment is December 1, 2017. The final maturity is June 1, 2046. The pricing, results of the pricing are shown on the next slide. The par amount of the bonds were 34.7. Total proceeds were 35.2. And the important thing on this page is, one, We started out with the assumption that we would get like probably an interest rate of 4.31. We actually ended up with a rate of 4.01, so we reduced our cost by 30 basis. And that has a positive effects in two ways. One, it reduced the interest cost. Also, it freed up additional proceed. At the higher rate that we had started out with, you were going to get $33.3 million in net proceeds for projects. As you see, we ended up with 35.4, an increase of $2.1 million in additional proceeds. So that turned out fairly well for us. The next slide is just a summary of the debt service associated with the bonds. You can see it's principal payments, interest payment, and total debt service. And then the next slide is a cash flow summarizing all of your debt service and the flow of funds. The very second column on the left is the revenue from the vehicle registration fund. And then the next column shows the debt service on the 2014 bonds that are currently outstanding and the coverage that we're achieving of those. And then the very next column shows the debt service on the 2017 bonds, which we'll be closing on tomorrow, and shows the projected coverage on those of 1.10. Again, it was a very successful transaction. I think it went very well. We were very successful, and the team that we had, Citigroup, CRRMA, and Stifel, worked very well for us in terms of making sure we got the best pricing possible. So I think the transaction turned out very well. Whenever you can lower your interest cost by 30 basis and end up with $2 million more in proceeds, that's a pretty good day. So I think it turned out very well. Any questions regarding the price, the transaction?
Well, through the chair, you mentioned that you went out aggressively, and I don't. What do you mean by that? The package you took was stretching a little bit?
We went out with lower rates. With the market may have been like at 350, we went out at 345. And that's aggressive, because if you don't get buyers, you have to go back. And it usually goes the other way.
I see. Yeah.
So, but we went out lower, and then it turned out that the market moved in our favor too. It was the tone of the market was very well. So we got into a window, a market window that worked to our advantage. And so even though we went out aggressive, we were also able to come back and make adjustments. So we went out at a 345. We actually did got the deal done at a 340. So that's kind of how it worked. And so the other approach is to go out very high, which is very conservative and really is not to your advantage.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much, and we thank you for your team, because I know how hard you all worked on this over the last few months, and so we thank you, because I think we ended up with a very favorable issuance. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. Consider and take appropriate action with respect to the defeasance of approximately $3 million of Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority pass-through toll transportation revenue bonds, First 601, Series 2008. Mr. Tejas.
Yes, ma'am. So for this one, we also have Wayne Placide as part of our financial advisor team here to present a brief PowerPoint explaining what we're intending to do with this item.
Thanks, Raymond. From time to time, we have, from the 2008 bonds that were sold in 2008, the way it works is excess funds that accumulate above what's needed for debt service can be used to redeem bonds before their maturity date. And we've done this pretty effectively. You can see on this slide, we have done this a number of times, and so far we've reduced like $38.8 million in bonds through redemption. And you can see the dates that we've done that. We actually reduced and completely redeemed the 2022 maturity was fully redeemed, and in 2021 have been partially redeemed. So we've used this pretty effectively. And so what happened is now, after all of those redemptions, and the size of this transaction when we issued the bonds in 2008 was $233 million. Now we're down to $92,455,000 outstanding. So it's been used to reduce your debt pretty effectively. And so at this time, we're offering or suggesting that you consider another redemption. This would be an amount of $3 million. Would be executed on May 15th this year. And we will use cash of $3,108,000 for this purpose. And the sources and uses shown there will use about $3 million and $37,000 for a refunding deposit, and then for fees, and we would have $4,000. And then after this transaction, your outstanding balance will be $89.4 million from the $92 million. So we would recommend that you consider going forward with this transaction. What happens is actually the bond's going to probably be paid off before the maturity date, which is going to be to your advantage. Be glad to address any questions you may have.
Mr. Wardy.
Mr. Tejas, where do we get $3 million to pay them off in advance?
So the way that this, and I'll ask Mr. Placide to cover me if I go astray. The way that these bonds work is that there's a flow of funds when we are paid by Texas. So actually, to back up for the benefit of the public, this bond issuance, the repayment source for these bonds is a pass-through toll agreement with Texas Department of Transportation. So every 6 months, we receive a payment based on the number of vehicles that are actually using the roadway, States per 601. Okay. The amount that we receive from them is above the minimum debt service payment that we are required to pay each 6 months. So there is a certain amount that goes into this extra fund that we have. So as that accumulates over time, then we use that to redeem additional bonds, and that's what we're doing here.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that that's...
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Placide?
If there are no questions, then the motion that I would request to the board is a motion to approve the board resolution that's included in your backup. That was drafted by bond counsel that would actually direct the trustee to redeem these particular bonds.
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
Second, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. So item number 5 is approved. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is presentation, discussion, and action on the 2016 annual audit as presented to the RMA Finance Committee. And Mr. Parker heads up that committee. Raymond, do you want to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met yesterday and reviewed the audit that was presented by our accountants. The committee recommended that the board consider the audit as presented by them during our full meeting today. We recommended in favor.
Okay, great. We've got Craig Gibson.
Yes, ma'am.
That's you going to walk us through some information?
Yes, we have a brief presentation here, and I am Craig Gibson with Gibson, Ruddick, Patterson. A couple of my associates are hiding in the back here, Vanessa Alarcon and Sonia Sanchez, and they're the brains of the organization. So I just have the gray hair, so they put me up front. First of all, the audit scope. The financial statements were audited in accordance with, and I love this acronym, GAGAS, Generally Accepted Governmental Auditing Standards. GAS, which you've heard referred to as the Yellow Book, the Texas Single Audit Circular, and after following this guidance, we issued what's referred to as an unmodified report or a clean audit opinion. The next slide here is just some excerpts out of the audit report. These are the major revenue sources that we had this past year. As you can see, the bulk of the revenues coming from TxDOT, and then the county's vehicle registration and the city's debt reimbursement and so forth. The major uses, the way this entity accounts for these major projects, as we've discussed before, this is a governmental entity, but it is a very unique governmental entity. So the accounting for these projects, for these major projects, at the end of each year, the construction is transferred over primarily to TxDOT or county, also in this case to the water utility, for projects that they funded, okay, or were the backing for the funding. And so that's why you see these three line items here. The also interest is a major outflow. The other is primarily our administrative expenses, which is really quite low for the amount of activity we have here. And then the principal payments, the principal reductions of almost $31 million. Then the net position or equity, if we were a business, it's broken down into three categories. The first is the net investment in capital assets. Now, the reason this is so large, we really don't have this much in assets that we're using to operate, okay? There's one project that has to do with the streetcar, correct? That it will not be transferred over to the city until it is complete. So actually, if you looked on the balance sheet of the actual audit report, page 14, towards the bottom of the assets section, you will see construction in progress of $30 million. That relates to this project. So that has bumped up this particular equity line item to $33 million. Of course, when that is transferred over in a year or so, that will come back down. Then the restricted for grants, this is revenue that's come in that has not been spent for its intended purpose yet, and then that leaves us with a negative unrestricted, which has to do with the way we're funded. We incur this debt, and then the other entities give us the revenue to make the debt payments, which comes in and goes out, but we have the debt on our books. Okay, so it's kind of a funding issue. Not that we're in trouble in any way, though. As far as findings, you may recall last year we did issue a finding that related to collateralization of deposits. The bank that was holding some of our deposits, something had happened in their system and they failed to renew the collateral. That has been corrected, and we do have no findings to report this year. So that is our summary report, and if you have any questions, I'll bring the brains up to respond.
Any questions for Mr. Gibson? None? Okay, well, thank you. Congratulations, Raymond. Mr. Tejas, on another good audit year. Excellent, thank you. And based on Mr. Parker's recommendation, could I have a motion?
I'll move that the board accept the audit.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, perfect. Item 6 is thank you to Ms. Sanchez and Ms. Alacon for your assistance and And of course, Mr. Gibson. Thank you all for being here. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute and submit a required annual compliance report to TxDOT.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Tess.
So as part of the backup, you'll see a board resolution that authorizes the executive director to submit the required annual compliance report. That report is actually part of the backup as well, and you'll note this is a form that is developed by the state that each of the RMAs have to fill in and submit each year. This is a standard document we've done for, I want to say, at least 3 years. I think when the rule change came in, 2 or 3 years for sure. I will mention, though, that in the original backup that I provided, there was a date in there related to when we brought on our independent auditing firm, and that's Gibson Ruddock, the folks that just presented to you. We brought them in 2014. That's when the procurement was completed to bring them on. However, in the certification, I've updated that to note 2016, which is when we actually executed the most recent audit agreement with them. So we do that each year. So I think it's a little more technically accurate to put in that August 2016 date for those particular compliance report sections. So aside from those very minor revisions, I would recommend approval so that I may submit this year's annual compliance report to TxDOT.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Tess on the report? None? Open for a motion to approve item number 7.
Motion to approve item number 7.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item 7 is approved. Item number 8, discussion and action on a board resolution to authorize the executive director to execute a service agreement with the El Paso Electric Company for the El Paso streetcar project for a new power substation at 601 South Santa Fe Street. This is an item that was removed from last month's agenda. Now we've got more information to move ahead on it.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am,
Tess?
that's correct. So you will recognize this, that there was a slew of these service agreements on last month's agenda. However, we had to delete 2 of them, or 3 of them, in fact. Actually, one of them is no longer necessary. One of them, we had not received the agreement from the electric company yet, and that's the item you see before you is item number 8. So now we have the paperwork, and I'm submitting it, requesting authority to execute that agreement. And the third one is still is the UTEP traction power substation, which is still going through the process between the UT system and the electric company, as well as the city of El Paso. So that one will be back to you at some future date. But today you have before you a request for a service agreement related to the power substation at 601 South Santa Fe. That's the location of the maintenance and storage facility, and that's where this particular transformer is being requested. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval.
Any questions for Mr. Tess?
I have one.
Mr. Wardy?
This is just for the construction, Raymond, right, of the connection of the power substation?
So
Or is it for the...
No, sir. So the construction of the traction power substation is included within the agreement that we have with the contractor. What this service agreement is to pay for the materials and the installation of a transformer that will then power the traction power substation. So this is an agreement with the electric company to pay them to install their transformer.
Okay, but there are estimates of revenue and everything, but we're not going to be the operator of the streetcar. So does this agreement transfer to the city of El Paso when we hand it over to them?
The intention is that this, along with all of the other agreements and warranties and all those sorts of things, will transfer to the city of El Paso. Yes, sir.
So who incurs the legal fees to do all that? We do or the city does?
All of these fees for these activities are included in the project costs.
No, including the transfer over to the city?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because the drafting of the agreements will be included in the project cost, the $97 million that we have. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Now, they'll, of course, their attorneys will review whatever our attorneys develop. They'll incur their costs for accepting it, but our attorneys will be paid for from these project costs.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 8 has been approved. Item number 9, we're going to take these 3 items together. Presentation and discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the following change orders to the construction contract with Paso del Norte Track Works as they relate to the El Paso streetcar project. A, change order number 11, unforeseen conditions related to conduit and irrigation repairs and parking rentals related to Father Rom construction. B, change order number 12, issues related to the maintenance and storage facility, fire suppression system, and with rail truss on the Santa Fe Bridge. And C, change order number 13, water connections for the maintenance and storage facility. Mr. Tejas.
Yes, ma'am. So today we have with us Gil Gardner, who is the project manager for the streetcar project. He's going to present this PowerPoint on these next 3 change orders.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Gil Gardner with the construction manager for the project. And we have 3 more change orders that we want to go through. I know you're getting tired of seeing me, but I enjoy being here. Anyway, we have 3 more.
You even smiled at that one.
Right. Change orders 11, 12, and 13. And as he said, change order 11 is for the repair of unforeseen conditions related to the conduit and irrigation repair, and then some parking space rental that we used, which I'll explain shortly. The electrical conduit, this is in putting the light poles and the OCS pole foundations in. Unforeseen conditions, they'd run into these. They had to replace these. The total cost of that was $37,000. And it's not a bad one, considering the fact that we had 400 poles to put in. So the additional unforeseen conditions. The parking space rental, has to do with the Father Rom area. As you know, we spent a lot of time in Father Rom as we'd finished up the paving. We'd actually completed our work, and the utility companies had to come in. We'd completed most of our work. The utility companies had to come in, and El Paso Electric had to replace the transmission line. That was a big one. In order to do that, because of the size of the poles, they had to close off the street completely. And so, because of the pavement, people would park on the street, and they would have to remove all of the cars in the morning. What we wanted to do is avoid having the police bring up the cars, take them to an impound lot, and then having the individual drivers have to pay the impound fees to get their car out of the impound lots. So what we did is we made arrangements to lease 6 spaces that if there were cars in there that they could take over to the lot, it would be no cost to the driver to go pick up their car. It would be inconvenient to them. We didn't want it right next door to it because we didn't want to, make it easy on them. But at least there was no cost to the driver. It was sort of a good neighbor relationship. We had a few cars that used, but we kind of considered that very good insurance for a community relations type thing. As you know, you guys have been down there. We really tore up their neighborhood for a year, so we didn't want to continue it. The third one was conflicts with the OCS foundations, the irrigation lines that either had to be fixed, repaired, or adjusted that we keep running into, and that was $12,000. The total cost of this change order here is $50,000. It's all within our contingency, the allocated contingency that we had set aside, so we're still well in the budget. This is some of the issues that we ran into as we tried to do it. You can see where we ran into the conduits. We had to make the changes and replaces as they drilled and tried to put the foundations in. Change order number 12 was we had to do the existing field conditions on the UP Bridge on Kansas and Santa Fe Street. We had to revise the rail profile and then had to use an alternative product, epoxy product, to provide a smooth ride across the bridge there, and that it was unanticipated. As you recall, those 2 bridges were being constructed as this project was going out to bid. And the previous contractor had not quite leveled the roadway like it should, and what we had to do is to go in and put a leveling course on. And that was the cost of it, of about $13,000. The second item under this change order here is with the maintenance storage facility, a vortex fire suppression system. And we got a request for information about the fire suppression system for the MSF electrical room. And the existing water base, or the designed water base fire suppression system, cannot be used in an electrical room. We've got about somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million worth of electrical and communications equipment. And if the water sprinklers were to go off, it would it'd cause more damage to the communication equipment. So we had them redesign, and the contractor gave us a price on a vortex fire suppression system that is the type to be used in an electrical mechanical room. And the total cost of that change order was $39,650. Once again, both of these are within the allocated contingency, although I will say that the contingency for the maintenance facility is getting very, very low. And I've told them that you can't come back to me with another change order for the maintenance facility because you're going to run out of money. This is some of the picture here of where we had to mend the rail profile, and we had to come in and put the epoxy in and do it just to make a good smooth ride. This is the communications, or the electric room there, where we put the MSF vortex system. This, by the way, is one of our traction power substations that will go into there. So there'll be a lot of electrical equipment in there, and that substation will actually power a good portion of the downtown system. So we don't want it going out, in case. Change order number 3 is very, very similar to what the previous thing on the electric. This is for the service line, the water service line. And the initial startup fee from El Paso Water Utilities, the fee's very similar to the El Paso electric service fee, with one exception. There's no refund or rebate or anything like this. So we just left it to the contractor to do, rather than trying to get it in our name, because we don't get any, the city does not provide any rebate. But this is from El Paso Water Utilities, and it's for the maintenance and storage facility. It actually includes it includes the 3 or 4 inch water service line plus a 6-inch fire service line. And the total cost that we have to pay to El Paso Water Utilities is close to $20,000. The rest of it is the markup of the contractor for managing it. This is just one of the later pictures of the maintenance facility. And by the way, we're looking forward to any of you that want to come down and do a tour of it. They're just about at the point to where they'd love to have you look and see it. Their schedule impact of 11, 12, and 13 can be completed within the current schedule. The project remains on schedule. The budget impact, it remains within the budget plus contingency. So the total of these is $112,000. The total contingencies that we've done to date is $5,199,626. Which is well within the allocated contingencies, and we still have allocated contingency remaining.
Very good.
So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Carden? Mr.
Just
Wordy?
one for Mr. Tejas. I understand the change orders. I have a procedural question. So when Sun Metro comes to Gil for a change order, that is signed off by the city manager, correct, for Sun Metro? Or does he get to bypass that system?
So I don't know what happens on Sun Metro side. Now let me start it by saying there are very few change orders that have been requested by Sun Metro that we've actually implemented. We have told them since early on, other than, and you may recall, some of the window changes and that sort of thing on the vehicles very early on that Sun Metro had requested. After that, we implemented a process whereby if they wanted any change orders, they would have to pay for them, because they developed the designs and for the project. They developed the spec book for the vehicle. So if they were looking for owner-initiated changes, then they would have to identify what those changes are, provide a funding source to us, and then we would implement for them. So after that initial round of very minimal change orders, they really haven't come to us, other than actually I know you recall the additional office that was put into the maintenance and storage facility. Now that I can't tell you what they did in their process to get to that point, but they did confirm that they would provide the funding for it. But I don't know if they went through the city manager, through the mayor, I really don't know that.
So the change orders that come to you from Sun Metro are not approved by the city manager?
I'm saying I don't know where they're approved. They come from Jay, who is my direct contact from Sun Metro, from Jay Banishak, the director of Sun Metro. But I don't know what Jay has done before he forwards them to me.
Okay, I'll find out.
And Jay has the authority to approve that. I guess they're.
Well, Jay provides the funding source as the director. So as long as he has the funding, then we're willing to move forward on a change order that is owner initiated.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Any
sir.
other questions for Mr. Gardner? Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so item number 9, A, B, and C, we'll take together.
Reluctantly, a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, items 9, A, B, and C have been approved. Thank you. Item number 10, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to execute the following instruments related to Loop 375. A, amendment to the agreement for professional engineering and environmental services with Brown and Gay Engineers. B, work authorization number 16.1 with Adkins North America as the RMA's general engineering consultant for additional oversight services necessary for the completion of preliminary engineering and environmental services. And C, work authorization number 30 with Adkins North America for oversight services necessary for the completion of final design documents. Mr. Tess, I know
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is a little bit more complicated, but you're walk
That's
us through
exactly
it.
right. I was going to
Thank
preface
you.
it by saying this one is a bit convoluted, so stick with me and stop me as I go through this if you have any questions. You may recall at last month's board meeting, we had an item on the agenda that authorized the executive director to sign an agreement, a funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation. The intent was, and actually let me back it up one step. The Americas Managed Lanes project is the project that, in essence, would continue the addition of the center lane of Loop 375 from where Chavez ends on its east terminus all the way up to and beyond the Americas interchange. So, in effect, what you're doing in that section of Loop 375, which is referred to as the Americas Avenue, we would be adding one lane in each direction to the center. That was the Americas Managed Lanes project. It was originally proposed as a toll project that is now under reconsideration as we talk about the removal of tolls on Chavez. However, the original project was funded by TxDOT for the RMA to develop the preliminary engineering and environmental documents. The way that we develop our projects is initially you have preliminary engineering and environmental. Once you complete that process, you move into what's referred to as the PS&E, the plans, specifications, and estimates, which is really what you think of the engineering design work. The PS&E is that second step. So the first step, again, was to develop the preliminary engineering and get through the environmental. We were funded by TxDOT to complete that for the Americas Managed Lanes. So now, if we go back to last month's agenda item, that agenda item was, the intention was for TxDOT to provide additional funds and additional authority through an amended agreement, which would allow us to not only complete the environmental and preliminary engineering, but actually expand the scope to include frontage roads and braided ramps in that section of Loop 375, which again is Americas Avenue. So that was what the board approved last month. However, subsequent to that, TxDOT has gone back and they've reconsidered and decided that they wanted to take a different approach to the development of the original managed lanes project plus the addition of the frontage lanes and braided ramps. So now what you see before you is the different approach. What they have asked is that we separate the project instead of merging the preliminary engineering and environmental along with the PS&E into a singular instrument. What they're looking for now is to separate that into a completion of the preliminary engineering and environmental, and then we would move on to the plan specifications and estimates. So, having said that, what you see as item 10A then is an amendment to the agreement that we have with Brown and Gay Engineers. They're the firm that is completing the preliminary engineering and environmental for the managed lanes. We're amending their agreement to increase scope to add the frontage roads and the braided ramps, but they are only going to complete the environmental and preliminary engineering. That's what you have as item A. Item B then is to amend work authorization number 16. The original work authorization that we had with Atkins as your general engineering consultant was work authorization 16. We are supplementing that by 16.1 to add additional funds for Atkins to complete the oversight of Brown and Gay as they complete the environmental and preliminary engineering. So that's what you have as items 16A and B. 16C then, 10C, sorry. 10C is a new work authorization with Atkins as your general engineering consultant. Number 30 is the work authorization, and that would be to begin developing the package that would go out for when we select someone to do the plan specifications and estimates. So again, 10A and B complete preliminary engineering and environmental. 10C then gives authorization to Atkins to begin the work on developing the PS&E package. And I should let me clarify that, this is an important point. Atkins will not do the PS&E. Atkins will do the oversight. So they will assist me in developing the package that we put out to procure someone to do the PS&E. And once we engage that firm, they will do the oversight of that PS&E for the actual project. And again, it's the expanded project, managed lanes plus braided ramps and frontage roads. So I hope that's helpful.
Questions? No, it's complicated.
Let me
There's a lot of pieces in
one
there.
final point. This was worked out with TxDOT Friday afternoon, right before we posted the agenda. This is the latest version that they believe is going to work. I have not heard yet from them that this is the final. Now, my understanding from the district is that items 10A and B is solid, and we're comfortable going that way. They were struggling with Austin on the approach for 10C. However, they requested that I bring this to the board because this project is under very tight timelines, and their intention is to push through with Austin to allow us to pursue it this way. So the intent was hopefully this week, actually, they're looking for final approval from Austin so that we can sign each of these three agreements and get to work immediately. Now, having said that, just as from last month to this month we've had a change, if there are any additional changes, I will definitely bring them back to the board and apprise you.
Okay, very good. Questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so item 9 has been approved. Sorry, item 10 has been approved. Moving on to item 11, discussion and action on board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute work authorization number 20.3 with Atkins North America as the RMA's general engineering consultant for the provision of various toll operation services in fiscal 17 for the Cesar Chavez Express toll lanes.
Yes, ma'am. So this item is a lot more straightforward. As you know, we use Atkins as our general engineering consultant, and one of the services that we request of them is to provide the toll operations and maintenance services. So that includes everything from handling customer service calls to if there's a problem in the lane, if there's a problem with the readers or the cameras or that sort of thing. They handle all of those activities for us as our operations and maintenance team. So what you see before you is item number 11 is in effect an extension of that existing relationship that we have with them, packaged as work authorization number 20.3. I would mention also as part of the scope in 20.3 is the ability and actually the support that I need as we continue our conversation with TxDOT on the potential removal of tolls. So not only are they handling customer complaints, customer inquiries, and that sort of thing, they're also providing the support I need as we work with TxDOT on the potential removal of tolls on Chavez. So subject to your questions, I would request approval of item number 11.
Any questions?
Motion to approve item number 11.
I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so item number 11 is approved. Item number 12, discussion and action on a board resolution directing the executive director to work with TxDOT on options available to develop the Northeast Parkway project. This is one of my favorite topics.
Good.
I like this one. Okay.
Very good.
Raymond.
This item comes from a recent conversation with the Texas Department of Transportation and Representative Pickett as well. We had been discussing this project, as you know, for quite some time. In fact, as part of your backup, behind the proposed board resolution is a PowerPoint from the last time that the Texas Department of Transportation came and briefed the RMA board about this particular project. We have had continuing conversations, sporadic, but continuing conversations with TxDOT about this project, how it would work, who would be the champion, and that sort of thing. Because of those recent conversations, TxDOT and Representative Pickett have actually asked if the RMA board is supportive of the project, and if so, they wanted to see an action from the board. So what you see before you is a board resolution directing myself to actually meet with TxDOT and begin formal discussions on the Northeast Parkway to determine what the options are available, how we could fund this thing, how we could develop it, how we could implement it, and that sort of thing. So it's really a request of TxDOT to confirm that this board is actually interested in pursuing this particular project. So with that in mind, I would request approval of this resolution.
Discussion, comment? Mr. Wardy?
Madam Chair, we all know that when the Border West extension is completed, that TxDOT has announced that they will begin the reconstruction of Interstate 10,
Right.
which could
Which
be...
will make everything look easy that we're doing now.
And it could be over, correct me, Mr. Tejas, it could be more than a 10-year project.
I have no idea, but I would not be surprised. It's significant. Okay. It is a significant project.
Well, look, if we don't take the lead, you know, sometimes I believe that RMAs are going to have to advocate for a project. There has to be an entity in this community that's going to advocate for this relief road or parkway to be completed to divert truck traffic and other traffic away from the central part of El Paso. I promise you, if there is an alternative for trucks to stay out of I-10 congestion, they will utilize it without question. Okay, and I know this is a difficult project. I think there are after some preliminary discussions that I don't think we can put on the agenda yet, not keeping secret, there are some opportunities to dovetail this with some others, and the sooner the better. And if we make it public that we support this project, you know, I know it's a $200 million plus project. I know that a lot of the environmental has already been done. So we could probably get this going a lot quicker than starting from scratch. So, Madam Chair, I think it's really important that we publicly support this project and do everything we can as a governmental body, including going to Austin to lobby for this, to help move this project forward and get it funded. I know that Fort Bliss is in total support of this project. And White Sands, and you know, our military infrastructure will be important as we go forward, and people take another look at reducing military bases. So things that communities do to improve the situation are going to be very important as we go forward. So thank you for putting this on the agenda,
Thank you.
Mr. Tejas.
And I know that, you know, we have challenges too, because we'll work with our neighbors, New Mexico, and I know that New Mexico DOT has looked at this as well, and I know there's challenges in the coming out of Santa Teresa, the trucks, and sort of the problem that they're going to have at Art Crap, and to bypass some of that will also be helpful as well. So really important project for our community.
Well,
Mr. Niemer?
and I'll echo the comments, but as an aside, particularly since it is an interstate project, there may be an awful lot of infrastructure money coming down the pike with the new administration, and shovel ready is going to again reach prominence, and so I think what we do towards that end now will serve us well. particularly for an interstate project.
I'd like to make a motion that we endorse this project and we direct our executive director to move forward with it.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Very good, thank you. So number 12 is approved. So number 13, presentation and discussion on the following performance reports for the second quarter fiscal year 2017. Mr. Tez.
Okay, next up we have several reports. As you know, we provide quarterly reports on each of our various programs. Today we have lined up the bike share program. First, if I could ask IT to bring up the PowerPoint. So we're talking about the second quarter of fiscal year 17. This is, of course, the route map. I always start with that, so that's available. This, incidentally, each of the, I should have mentioned this earlier, all of the PowerPoints, as we always do, all of the PowerPoints that we presented today will be online, available to the public right after this meeting. So this is the map. This is the summary activity. So as you know, and we've discussed this in the past, this second quarter is always the most difficult. I say always, we've only been in operation a little over a year, but we recognize that seasonally it's going to be our most difficult quarter. It includes the winter, so our numbers will always drop. However, you'll note from last year we had 853 rides in this particular quarter. This year we're over 2,000. So while it's definitely increasing from last year, you'll note it's significantly lower than quarter one. I would note, however, in the next slide we'll get into the details of it, but March alone almost surpassed quarter two entirely. So we're seeing significant jump up, just like we did in quarter three of last year. You saw 2,488 rides in quarter three of last year, whereas in March you had over 2,000 rides in March alone of 2017. So this is going to be a cyclical issue that we deal with each year. I will mention that our team has already, incidentally, he's here, yes. Cesar Martinez is here. He runs our operations and maintenance for the Sun Cycle program. They took this time, and we've learned a great deal from cooperating with other agencies. We've learned to take this downtime and do a lot of the maintenance activities that you normally don't have time to do during the regular period. So we were, I think, very successful in that particular quarter in that regard. Anyhow, so to get into the quarter itself, over 2,000 rides, 2,102 rides to be exact for these last 3 months. Total rides, we had 98,000 minutes and over 10,500 miles ridden in this quarter. The average ride was at 46.7 minutes, and they were averaging 5 miles per ride. You had over 9,935 pounds of carbon offset, and calories burned, we had over 418,000 in this particular quarter. So a fair quarter, but again, lower than we will see this quarter for sure. I touched on this before, quarter two includes the coldest months. Historically, this has been, and I believe will continue to be, our slowest quarter. March, I mentioned this past March had 2,052 rides, 89,000 minutes of rides, 11,000 miles, and 439,000 calories burned. So significant month of March. San Jacinto Station remains as our most active station, followed by Pioneer Plaza. Those two far outpace everywhere else. Those are our most active stations. Cleveland Square and Anthony bring up the top four. Saturday actually eclipsed Sunday. Sunday had been for quite some time our most active day, and in this particular quarter, Saturday became our most active day. And the rides show 3 peak periods now, whereas they used to be just 8 and 10 p.m. We've added a peak period at 3 in the afternoon, which is an interesting twist for this last quarter. The top 50 rides, we monitor all this information. We have any of this if you're interested in seeing this in more detail. The top 3 are round trips: San Jacinto, Pioneer Plaza, and Cleveland Square. And this is really more for the benefit of the public. This is summarized in that initial sheet. You have this available to you as part of your backup, and again, this will be posted online. These are the reports, the quarterly reports. We have monthly reports as well, should you be interested in getting into the detail on any particular month. These are the summaries of activity. We show trips by duration. We show how long the trips are. We're showing by day of week, and those are the peak periods down at the bottom. Here's the financial activity. As I mentioned, the revenues were down for this quarter. We were just under $10,000 in generated revenues with expenses of $45,000. That shows our O&M remaining funds at $485,000. So I wanted to bring this to you, a couple of things really. This photo is a couple of SunCycle employees. These are our folks that work for Caesar. We actually sent them out to South by Southwest. This happens every now and then, and we've done this, I think, once, maybe one other time before this, where we will send out our crews to help out other B-cycle operators. In Austin, as you know, South by Southwest is a significant week-long event in downtown Austin. That is really the main revenue generator for Austin B-cycle. So we lent some support and sent our guys out there to help out. It really helps us too. It shows us what their practices are. If we can pick up any industry standards, any different ways of doing things, and that sort of thing. But anyhow, I like this photo because it shows them at a B-cycle station in Austin. But more importantly, it shows them wearing our SunCycle T-shirt. So that's a neat thing that I think will continue to participate. There's a lot of cooperation among the various B-cycle cities. So this is just a neat photo of that. Beyond that, I wanted to highlight a couple of events. Caesar's been very active in getting B-cycle out there into the community. We'll be participating in a UTEP Health Fair, the Nor'easter Parade, La Viña Spring Festival, and Earth Day celebrations both in downtown and at UTEP. The UTEP one I'm particularly interested in because I feel that's a market that we have not really taken advantage of just yet. So we'll be on campus with bikes, sharing promotional codes, sharing T-shirts, and explaining to the students what we are, how it works, and that sort of thing. And we're also going to participate in the Growth Symposium. So those are just a few examples of Caesar and his team getting out into the community. So that's what I have for you for this quarter, unless you have any questions.
Mr. Tejas, so congratulations. I love this program. It's really good. We've got some great momentum. But I also think it's an opportunity for us to push out our promotional campaign, and that could be other sources of revenue for us because I think we're visible. You know, we see the bike stations and we see bikes downtown, and whether it's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 8 or 10 o'clock at night, I think that's just opportunities for us to be able to sell promotional signage and for our program. And I think as we go into the really spring and summer months, let's take advantage of that and push that along.
Absolutely. We will do that. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Morty.
I wanted to share with the board, I had the occasion to travel to Seattle, Washington 2 weeks ago, and it was raining, so I didn't want to take my phone out to take a picture, but I didn't know, and it's the first one that I've seen, Seattle rents helmets at their bike stands. So theirs are similar to ours, but they're not allowed to ride a bicycle in downtown Seattle without a helmet. And most, if you read anything, health practitioners, and I'm not saying that we do this, do not recommend you riding a bicycle anywhere without a helmet. And perhaps, and I don't know what the statistics are from our research, perhaps it would increase our ridership if we had the helmet rental option. They have machines that dispense them. It's pretty interesting, and machines where they can return them. So I know it becomes another management issue on making sure you have enough helmets at the right station, but perhaps it might increase our ridership if people knew that they could get bike helmets to ride, because I don't even want to mention what could happen if you don't have one, but I just bring it up for conversation.
Well, and we can certainly look at that. I'll ask Caesar, and we'll contact some of our member B-cycle partners and see what they're doing in regard to helmets. I know at the outset we looked at that. In fact, the city of El Paso at the time when we were looking to launch this particular program was proposing an ad campaign where they would sponsor purchasing X number of helmets and they would pass them out more as a promotional activity rather than actually having them available at the stations. And in the end, they decided against it. And I think it's, this is Texas. It's a little bit different. The helmets are optional. They're never required, whether you're on a motorcycle or a bike or otherwise. Not to say that we don't promote it. In fact, we have I believe on our bikes and certainly in our literature, we recommend the use of helmets as well. Anyhow, so long story short, I'll get with Caesar and we'll look at what they're doing out there and see if we can't come up with a similar program.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Martinez, you and your team, thank you very much, because I know you guys are out there and pushing our program, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, 13B, the Cesar Chavez Express toll lanes.
Yes, ma'am. So this is our quarterly report for Chavez. We have with us today Cesar Nevares. He is part of our general engineering consultant team, and he's going to present the results from this last quarter.
Good morning, members of the board.
Morning.
Cesar Nevares with the GEC. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Cesar Chavez Performance Report. The presentation will include transactions per working day, total transactions, and total revenue. On our first slide, we have transactions per working day, which are the number of vehicles going through the facility per day. The data is presented in a bar graph per quarters, and the bars represent fiscal year data being analyzed. Focusing on the second quarter for fiscal year 2017, we notice that it has decreased from the first quarter, and this is possibly due to the ongoing construction projects throughout the city. Next, we have total transactions. The data is presented in bars and line styles per quarters. The bars represent dollar amounts by AVI and pay by mail. Essentially, an AVI is a transponder or a toll tag, and pay by mail essentially is motorists without a toll tag. Focusing on the second quarter for fiscal year 2017, we notice that it has decreased from the first quarter. Again, this might be due to the ongoing construction projects throughout the city, which make it difficult for motorists to access the facility. Now, focusing on the AVI penetration, which is the gray line style, we notice that it's maintained steady through both quarters. Furthermore, the boxes on the top provide a comparison between transactions and forecasts. For year-to-date fiscal year 2017, box to your left with a 53% difference, and for actual fiscal year 2016, box to your right with a 26% difference. Ultimately, pay by mail remains the preferred method by motorists. Now we have total revenue. The data is presented in a bar graph per fiscal year quarters. The bars represent either forecasted or collected dollar amounts by AVI and pay by mail. Focusing on the second quarter for fiscal year 2017, it is noted that it has increased from the first quarter. Furthermore, the boxes on the top provide a comparison between collected and forecasted dollar amounts. For year-to-date fiscal year 2017, box to your left with a 47.1% difference. And for actual fiscal year 2016, box to your right with a 3.5% difference. Moving on, the table shows previously presented data combined to provide a transaction and revenue summary, which also includes the fiscal year 2017 second quarter. Moving on, we have revenue and expenses. The table provides actual revenue, actual expenses per fiscal year. Focusing on fiscal year 2017, the amounts provided are year to date. Additionally, expenses include cost of collections, operations, insurance, and maintenance. For our last slide, we have the Veteran Waiver Program, which is established to provide disabled veterans with a certain percent disability a waiver to use the facility. Year to date, over 100 tags have been issued with over 13,000 program transactions, which is about over 2.5% of the total transactions. This concludes the Cesar Chavez Performance Report presentation. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Wardy?
Yes.
Can we go back 2 slides?
Sure.
Let's go back to that one right
No.
there. So what do you estimate, if you can, what the break-even revenue is? I see the expenses fluctuating. So is there a number that's projected that we've got to have to balance expenses against revenue? Have you got the number in your head for that?
So the answer is yes. Well, the answer is no, I don't have it in my head, but the answer is yes, we do have all of those projections, and I can get those for you.
Can we
Certainly.
put that on the agenda? Because there's a little bit of a disturbing trend here. And I think we need to see maybe a little more detail, maybe not as part of our report, but as an agenda item.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if we could request that, I'd really like to see what the break-even point, because there are some, I know that downtown Santa Fe and some of that's messed up, but
Yes.
I'm not aware that the rest of it is torn up. I mean, the other portions of Cesar Chavez.
Well, the issue that Mr. Nevares was referring to in terms of construction impacting users is that there were several construction activities happening at the same time that impact potential users in different areas. So by way of example, out at the far east side at the Americas Interchange, TxDOT was completing the flyovers, the remaining 2 direct connectors. So it made it difficult to get even onto Loop 375 that was going to take you down to Cesar Chavez. Then once you get past Cesar Chavez, there's construction downtown at Kohl's that was routing people off and doing that sort of thing. So it was difficult to get into downtown. Then once you got into downtown, the streetcar project was making it a little bit difficult to get up Santa Fe. In fact, actually right now, Border West Expressway has closed Santa Fe entirely south near the exit of 375. Streetcar has a section of Santa Fe closed as well in front of the maintenance and storage facility, so you couldn't get onto Paisano. And then, of course, Paisano was closed for many months as well. And the reason I'm laying all of that out like that is because many of our users, especially early on, the early adopters, were folks that were going from the far east side to the far west side, and they would get on at 375, head downtown, from downtown to Santa Fe onto Paisano, and then head out to the west side. So that connection was lost at different points along the way. So we believe that that's one of the impacts that's involved.
That begs a question I think TxDOT can help us with. Okay, this is toll lane usage. I would love to see them measure the number of vehicles using at various strength points, or whatever you would call them, focal points in Loop 375, to see what the traffic is, total traffic on Cesar Chavez, so that we can have some data to make some
To show
decisions
percentage
here.
of usage
Yeah.
from that.
It's a good
And maybe they
question.
could help us. I know they have the equipment to do that. It would really be helpful to us to see a snapshot on a 30-day period. What's the total traffic on Cesar Chavez
Certainly.
as measured at various points?
Great.
You know, I
I'll
don't know
ask-
if they might be willing to do that for us.
Oh, I'm certain. And the question is, are they monitoring that now? And if so, do they have historic data? That would be really, I
Right.
think, to me, very interesting. So I'll ask Mr. Nevares to look into that for us.
Yes, we'll do.
And we can provide that to the board.
And the other challenge, too, is that we have not promoted the toll lanes because we're in this determination whether we're going to continue with tolls or not. And so I think that has an impact on it, because obviously early on we were promoting it. We had newspaper. I think we had also TV ads. So there were things that we did to promote it, and we've really backed off on that, too. So we can see that along with construction. But I think it would be interesting to see the percentage of cars going and that are, how much the toll lanes are being used based on the total traffic.
Yes,
I think it's a great suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Nevares. Okay, we'll move on to item 13C, our GEC's use of local resources. Mr. Head is coming. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. David Head, part of our GEC team, is going to present this item.
Good morning. David Head with GEC. And I'll be talking about the GEC's use of local resources. So we'll go through the data that you've seen before various times, and then we'll go into a graphic representation. We'll look at the firm summary for each of the firms, and we'll take any questions if you may have them. So this is the data from from inception to date, and as you look at it, the quarters are down the left side of the page, and we're talking about quarter 32 right now, which is our most recent data, which is November 2016 to January 2017. And as you walk across the page to the right, you have the local labor for each of those quarters, and it is how much has been spent, and then the percentage of that for that quarter. And the next one over is the non-local labor. So as you go down the page, in the middle you can see the bright red square. That's the last 4 quarters that we've been looking at. And the last quarter, quarter 32, is what we're talking about, November 2016 to January 2017. So in that quarter, we spent $846,000, and that's 92% of what we spent in that quarter. And at the very bottom of the page, the totals, that's the inception to date percentage of local labor. So below that red square is we're using 54%, and you can see the dollar amount there. So what I like to look at is the graphs. It kind of tells me a better picture of it. And the way you orient on this graph is the quarters are represented by the bars. So you have the purple and the gold bars down there. And the non-local labor is the purple, and the local labor will be the gold bar. So if you go across the page all the way to quarter 32, that's the quarter we're talking about. Those figures are represented on the left side. So for instance, the gold bar on quarter 32, we're at that $840-something thousand that we spent for that quarter. And with that, you'll see the squiggly line. So the gray squiggly line is by quarter. So for instance, for quarter 32, that's that 92%, I believe, that we're showing for that quarter. And then the purple line, that is the cumulative, which is at the 54% we saw in the data before. So as you can see, we are still trending up, and it's been a sharp rise just because of the construction, I would believe. But it tells a pretty good story of where we're at with things. This is the firm summary just by firms for all the GEC firms. As you can see, it's got the totals and the percentages. And this is inception live to date. So. And I'll take any questions if you may have them.
Questions for Mr. Head on the report? We like that trend. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the end of our agenda. I do want to do one, just an acknowledgement, a recognition. David Plakowski with TxDOT, and he's been coming out here for a little bit, and he's been with TxDOT for 27 years, and this guy who looks so young is actually retiring at the end of this month. So congratulations on that, David, and come out and see us once in a while.
Good heavens.
Thank you. Okay.
Looks like he's old enough to start work.
I know. That's right. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn today.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, so we are now adjourned. The RMA is now adjourned at 10:14 on April 12th, 2017. Thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Good job.